So in our yesterday's session, we started discussion about Spring Boot JPA module. So what is a JPA module and what is the purpose of JPA? What is JPA? And what is the relation between JPA and Spring Boot? And what is the relationship between JPA and Hibernate? And what is the point of JPA versus ORM? We understood all these details in a theory point of view in yesterday's session. So the JPA is a specification. Generally, the JPA is a concept given by the Java language only. So as an under enterprise edition, so JPA is all about dealing with the database operations again. So that means a layer on top of JDBC. Better solutions when comparing with the JDBC. So JDBC we will use for making database operations. Similarly, JPA is also for the purpose of database operations only. But the point of JPA is all about achieving all the object-oriented programming solutions. Nothing but ORM concepts. There is a concept available, ORM, object relational mapping. Nothing but you are making a connectivity in between Java and database with respect to objects. So the DB operations what we are going to perform as part of the JPA framework is all about dealing with the objects. So the moment whenever you want to make any database operation, for example, if you want to insert data, if it is JDBC, what we used to do, we will send a insert query like insert into employee, something like that. We will send a SQL query directly to the DB so that database can understand SQL language and query will be executed on the database level. So there is no hidden process in this case. But the JPA is saying, as a developer, when we are writing Java logic or as part of our Java logic, why can't we make sure everything 100% looks like object or object oriented solutions? Give me a second, just a second. Yeah, sorry for the guys. I have to take your call. Okay. So that's what we discussed. Like we are sending directly a query to the DB via JDBC, but here JPA is all about saying like solutions, everything as 100% is object oriented. Even though you are doing DB operations, so that means instead of involving SQL language as part of our Java logic, why can't we make everything via object oriented solutions like that? That is the idea of JPA. So with that idea, JPA came, and but again the process here it is database can understand only SQL. Database can understand only SQL. So then JPA is saying object, but database can understand SQL. So what you can do in this case? So in this case, again, the concept is same again. So what JPA is saying is, we will make an abstracted layer here. Okay, we are going to make some implementation based on the JPA specification. So that implementation, that implementation of JPA specification is going to take care of converting objects to SQL queries and SQL results to the Java objects, the entire conversion process based on the instructions what we are passing to this layer. Based on that instruction, generating the SQL queries dynamically and sending those queries to the DB, as well as whenever database giving the result set back and converting that result set back to the again Java objects and returning back to the Java logic level. This is what JPA is suggesting us based on the JPA specification. So JPA is saying like in your Java, you no need to write SQL queries. Follow some instructions based on my rules and regulations. And based on that, if you return your Java logic, I will, okay, and as well as the implementation of JPA specification is going to add it as a layer, hidden layer or abstracted layer. So the abstraction process is going to take those objects and the instructions. Based on that, it will generate the SQL queries. And finally, those queries sent to the DB level. So database can understand SQL. Yes, finally SQL query only went, but the conversion from object and instruction to an SQL query is happened by this implementation. So that means tomorrow when you are using same JPA directly into our applications also, if you want to achieve JPA features, then as a developer, we have to first taking care of the JPA specification. So that means as a developers, first we have to take care of this JPA specification. We have to understand and we have to provide implementation of JPA specification, and then we have to use it into our applications. That is what the process. But the point here it is, again, implementing JPA specification is not that much easy. You have to take years and years again for that. But your application is a business application is different, and providing implementation for JPA and then you are using JPA into your application is not possible that much easily. But in our software market, so there are some companies, they taken this JPA specification and they implemented solutions based on the JPA specification. So those are all called as frameworks. So based on the JPA specification, whatever Java released to achieve the object related mapping solutions, ORM functionalities, by taking that solution, so many companies implemented the JPA specification, and those are all called as ORM frameworks. And those are all called as Hibernate, TopLink, MyBatis, iBatis. Yesterday we saw, right? Top JPA, something like that. So the list of frameworks are available in the market with respect to JPA specification. So that means in our application now we can use Hibernate, TopLink, iBatis, MyBatis, Top JPA. These are all we can use. Any one of them we can use in our application. But the more popular, right? So many things will be existed in the market, but one thing will be popular, and people will use always only popular one, right? So similar point of view, Hibernate is the most popular one, as well as Hibernate is a open source. So the meaning of open source means free. So that's why most of the applications people are going to use Hibernate. The reason is Hibernate is having longer community support, and it is having definitely better things when comparing with other frameworks, because it's having more popularity. Definitely it will have more community, more support also. So that's why most of the applications people will use Hibernate only. So that's why in our real-time project now, what we are going to do, assume you are working on a simple Java application and you don't want Spring also. Yes, you can implement a project directly Java plus Hibernate point of view also. To do the DB operations, you can take combination of Java plus Hibernate also, guys. Nothing but you are taking JPA. So JPA plus Hibernate combination you can take in a project point of view. This is what combination happened before Spring Framework came into the picture. Before Spring Framework came into the picture, people used only as an Hibernate individually into our Java applications. So that's why Hibernate got more popularity. Sorry. Yes, sir. So Hibernate got more popularity at one point of time. But after that, Spring Framework came into the picture. And what Spring Framework did, here it is. They take a combination of JPA's Hibernate, and they also added a few more abstracted features. So they also simplified couple of things on top of JPA Hibernate Java perspective, and they released as a Spring Boot JPA. So that means a Spring Boot JPA is a superset of features of when comparing with Hibernate. So you are having more features when comparing with Hibernate, and it's very easy for the developer to use also when comparing with Hibernate. So many things are abstracted by the Spring Boot. That means the complexities what we have in Hibernate is simplified by the Spring Boot JPA, and they released as a Spring Boot JPA module into market. So now as a developers, when we are working for any application, when we are creating any software applications, so to do the database operations, if you are taking Spring Boot JPA into our project, means nothing but you are taking JPA functionalities, Hibernate functionalities, as well as the extra features whatever provided by the Spring Boot JPA, those are also we can import into our application. So this is what discussion we had yesterday. So what ultimately we understood here it is by using JPA, we are going to make sure object relational mapping concepts, we are going to achieve ORM functionalities, nothing but you are going to make database operations without writing SQL queries. But to do all this, to achieve all this functionality, like without writing SQL queries, making DB operations, it's not that, I mean, it's not straightforward. So definitely when you're achieving something in the automation perspective, at least you have to follow some guidelines. Now JPA provided some concepts here, and if you are following those concepts as part of the JPA or Spring Boot JPA, then you can achieve this forum functionality. So what are those concepts and what and all? Let's start looking into programming now. So it's all about now making programming things, and we will try to understand how we are making DB operations by using JPA. Okay, so yes. Okay. Okay, so let's take first a small requirement and then we'll try to understand based on this requirement how we are going to make the same thing via JPA perspective. Let's try to understand. So in our JPA point of view, what we did, we inserted details. Simply, my requirement is like this. Just one small requirement we will take, and then based on that, we will try to understand the flow of Spring JPA. So requirement is doing the database operations only ultimately. And first requirement, a small requirement we will take, like adding, updating, deleting, loading. Generally, these are all operations we will do, right? So you will do all these database operations generally. Adding means inserting, updating, deleting, select operations. Loading means select query. So generally you will do, it will be called as CRUD operations. CRUD, whatever you can call, it's up to your choice. CRUD. Okay. So create is nothing but insert query. And read, R represents read, nothing but select query. So U represents update. Yes, in this case, it's all about update query only again. And then D represents delete. So that means delete queries only. So these are all DML queries. Generally, we will see. So these three are DML and this is a DQL, data query language. Okay. So these operations only will do. We did already via Java JDBC and Spring JDBC also by writing SQL queries. But our JPI is saying like without writing SQL query, performing the DB operations. So how it is possible? Let's see here. So, and continuation to this, we understood a small point again yesterday, ORM, right? So let's understand again few minutes for about it, and then we will enter into programming. Object relational mapping. So the moment object, I told right, object representing Java, relational representing database. So that means you are making a mapping between Java concept versus database thing. So you are making a mapping in between Java and database. So that is what the concept of ORM. So how we are making this mapping in between Java language versus database or SQL point of view. Let's try to understand. So I said yesterday, first it's all about DB. It's all about here the major key element is database. The moment you are having database, nothing but you are having the tables. So table 1, table 2, table 3, table 4 like that. So I will take one table for time being. So same concept for more than one table also. So I have product table and I have some columns, product ID, name, and as well as price and manufacturer name, etc., etc. So you may maintain multiple columns based on the columns. So it's all about database. So in this database, table name is product. Table name is product. Now, generally, what we will do by using table, I mean, in database point of view, we will write SQL queries and we will start putting data into tables like insert into product values 1 comma iPhone comma 1 comma laptop comma 2 comma something like that. We will insert data into this object. Yeah, into this DB table level. So by writing SQL queries, probably we will keep data like 1 comma something like phone and price, whatever it is, 2 comma something like PC personal computer, and then followed by price, whatever it is. Like that, you will put the data. This is the purpose of database. Okay, fine. Okay. So now the same thing as a Java application point of view, Java language point of view, if you are doing, we use a JDBC. That story we know that. Now JPA point of view we are discussing, right? So what JPA is saying, writing without writing SQL queries, you have to do all these operations. Whether you want to insert, for example, you want to insert some data like 3 and something like mobile or whatever it is, iPhone mobile, whatever it is, something like that. You want to insert this data. So how can you do that? Or if you want to update the data, if you want to delete the data, if you want to load all this information, how you have to. So Java is always an object oriented programming language. So that means in Java, we will do everything via object point of view. So in this case, what JPA is saying here it is, whenever you defined a table in the database to do the for data storing inside the table, based on the table, based on the table, we have to create a class. So understand the point. Based on DB table structure, based on DB table structure, okay, based on DB table structure, we have to create a class. We have to create a class, and that is called as, and that class is called as entity class. So that means simply what is this point is saying is, with respect to database operations, whenever you want to do, first you will create the table. So generally in real-time application perspective also, what will happen here it is, you may get a doubt, sir, in real-time applications, generally what people will do. So first, at any point of time when you are working for the real-time applications, people will make data, okay, design guys. So as part of design, what is the architectures we will follow, how many tables we required, and what are the relationships between the tables, one to one, one to many, foreign key relationships, all these things like DB design, whatever it is, we will do that. So that means before writing the Java logic itself, okay, I'm saying like first tables will be created. After doing all analysis and database design, whatever it is, first as tables will be created and then people will start writing the Java logic. Whether it is a JDBC, whatever, leave it. First tables will be created based on the requirement point of view. What are the columns we want? What are the relationships we want and all. So based on the tables creation, then people will start writing the Java logic. So that means first tables coming into the picture and then Java logic coming into the picture. So that's why I'm taking this point. The moment based on the requirement you created tables in the database, and based on the database table structure, we have to create a class, and that class we are going, I mean, in this case, the JPA calling that class as a entity class. So that means the overall process, what you are understanding here it is, what JPA is saying is, in this case, create an entity class. So what is an entity class? And whenever the moment going further, you hear something as entity class. The moment you heard something as entity class, please remember, guys, that entity going further, whenever I used a word called as entity class, nothing but that Java class is implemented or developed based on a database table structure. Based on a database table structure, that class is created with some few new things. So that's why going further, the moment you heard anywhere else as entity class is nothing but that class dedicatedly implemented based on a database table structure. So how it is and all, we will see that. So the next question is, what is an entity class and how to implement the entity class? So that means what we understood right now, here it is. So we understood like we have to create an entity class. Now what is an entity class? And how to create an entity class? We'll get solutions to this. Okay, so I'll discuss this. Okay, so assume you created entity class, but how to create it and all, I'll tell you. Second, the moment you created the entity class based on a table structure. So for example, this table is having three columns. This table is having three columns. Assume to create this table, product table, probably we have any SQL script. Okay, it is expiring. Create a table. Yeah, so assume this is how we created the table, right? Understand the point. Okay, you created DB table by using this script. So I said, right, first tables will be created. So based on that, assume a table is created like this. So a table is created called as product and its ID, product name, product price, three columns. Okay, fine. If you want, I can add P also here, P ID, P name. Okay. So this is how we are making the things. So what I said, based on the DB table structure, we have to write a some entity class. So how to write and all, we will see in detail point of view. So what is the point of DB table structure? Here it is. How many columns it is having? Three columns it is having. So that means I'll take DB table structure. So the moment I said DB table structure, okay, so whenever I said DB table structure, so what happened in this case, DB table structure is, this is what this structure. So that means you created table name as, okay, let's take like this. So here in this case, table name is product. And then column name 1, column name, first column name 1 is PID, and that is size of number of 5. That means only natural numbers up to 5-digit values you can allow. You are allowing it. Second thing is column name 2, and it is P name, and you are allowing up to 50 characters as a varchar 2. And the third column is column name 3 is all about price, and you are allowing decimal values, floating values you are allowing up to 8-digit long, and 2-digit values and 2 precision values are allowed. So this is what your DB table structure. This is what table name, column names, and the data types. Now what I said, here it is. You have to create a class called as we are going to create a class called as entity class, right? So simply, what is an entity class is, first point number 1. Simply it is a POJO class. First, simply it is a POJO class. Simply it is a POJO class. You know the meaning of POJO class. What is the POJO class generally? POJO class standards are private variables and setter comma getter methods. Generally you will follow this approach for the what setter and getter methods point of view. This is the Pojo class. So that means we are going to create a Pojo class only. Okay. So, but the thing here it is, when you will call that Pojo class as an entity class, here it is. So JPA provided a set of annotations. JPA provided a set of annotations. See, in earlier case, JPA Hibernate point of view, we used to do XML configuration also, guys. So before annotations into Java language, people used to go everywhere XML only. When you are working with servlets, XML configuration. When you are working with struts, XML. When you are working with Spring, like 10 years, 15 years back, when you don't have annotations concept in the Java language and annotation is not that much popular or before annotations, people have only one option called as XML configuration. Everything people used to do only XML. But after that, slowly annotations came into the picture and slowly XML configuration is okay, got gone. XML configuration is gone and people are adapted only annotation based configuration. So, but sometimes very old applications I can say like, but no, I don't think nowadays is following in latest approaches. So very old legacy applications, if you are going or if you are referring any old tutorials, old, very old material, you will see some places XML configuration, but ignore it. Nobody is taking XML. Even Spring itself, nobody is taking, but as an understanding perspective, we understood. So similarly, when you are working with JPA and Hibernate also, at one point of time, we used to have XML configuration also. But after that, slowly annotations came into the picture, right? So people are adapting only Java oriented solutions, not other language solutions. So people started going with annotations. Similarly, in this case also, Java JPA provided some set of annotations. Okay. So set of annotations means more than one annotation. We will see those. So here, the moment a class marked with an annotation is called as sorry, a class marked with an annotation at the rate entity is called as entity class. So that means once you defined a Java Pojo class based on the DB table structure, you will use an annotation called as entity, and that called class is called as entity class. So that means now let's understand again here. So what I said, first DB table you have to create manually like this. In a real-time application also we will do same thing. And then you have to create an entity class. So entity class is nothing but first Pojo class. So what you have to be taking care of the suggestions here it is. First thing is you know how to create a Pojo class, right? And as part of Pojo classes, how many properties we have to take here? How many properties we have to define? Pojo class is nothing but what private variables. So private variables means I mean generally we used to call those as properties. Here the number of columns you are having three columns. Column number one, column number two, column number three. Right? Column name, three columns. Your table is having three columns. If you are having 10, 15, whatever it is, ultimately this table is having three columns. Okay. This table is having three columns. Fine. And we know the details also. We already, because we only created the table, right? So that's why we will have always these details. Now, that means how many properties we have to define here as part of the Pojo class is number of columns based on the number of columns. Based on number of columns in a table. Okay, so that is what my answer. So that means the moment you created a Pojo class, you will create three properties as part of this. And then what about the data types of the properties? So how to decide data types of the properties? So how to decide data types of properties. So here the point is, if you observe the data type of database, that's what I said, based on the DB table structure, we have to write the entity classes. So in this case, if you observe here, the data types of the table, first we have to understand the data types of the table. So what the first column is all about product ID. So and the data type is what? Number of 5. So number of 5 is what is the possible values? It's all about the number of 5 is saying like pure natural numbers. Pure natural numbers. That means there is no, I mean, in DB also, when you are putting floating part values into this, your query will not be executed. If you are doing probably see something here, dot 99 something like that, if I am executing this insert query, is it going to execute? Means no. The meaning is why. So it's just taking, I think, precision values, number of 5 and all. I mean, in earlier case point of view, I just it is all about updated rows. Why? Taking round figure value and all. So it's a different functionality. Leave it. Okay. So on a simple level, we'll go it. We don't want to go that much level. See, it's a simple thing is natural numbers. Your intention is why you created. Generally, you know that product ID is always we will define always 1, 2, 3,000, 1 lakh like that. Generally natural. So that's why you taken like this. So it's a natural number. So with respect to this kind of range, natural numbers and length of value is 5. So that means in Java equivalent to this, what is the data type we have? To overcome this natural numbers, only numeric values as well as length of 5. So what is the data type available inside Java for this? So I can say like integer. So I can say like integer. Yes, integer in Java is going to allow us enter up to 5 values, that too only natural numbers. So that's why I can take first property data type as integer. Integer. Similarly, second one, product name. Column name is product name, data type is varchar2 of 50. So the moment varchar2 is nothing but in DB what varchar or varchar2, you are allowing, you are putting some alpha numeric values. Alpha numeric and as well as symbol values, whatever it is, alpha numeric values and a simple point of view. Now with respect to Java point of view, what is the alpha numeric values data type it is allowing? String. So that's why I have to take total 3 properties I have to define. So here the answer is 3 based on the table. Right now we have 3. So that's why 3. Now those 3 core properties we are deciding like what are the data types. Second one is string. And the third one is number of 8 comma 2. So that means its length is 8, but it is allowing up to 2 precision values. So nothing but the moment number of 8 comma 2 I said, it's all about allowing the precision values. It's all about allowing the precision values. So if you want, you can put some precision point of view. Generally, that is what idea here it is, right? So it's all about precision values. I don't think what is the data type I given? Yeah, number of 8 comma 2 only, right? So if you see here, dot double eight, precision value is maintained here, dot double eight. So that means in Java to overcome same kind of things, what 8 digit length and all, you can go with double or float based on the range. So 8 values, so I can go with double also. So I assume I taken double here. So this is how you have to identify the number of properties as part of Pojo class, and you have to make sure for every column point of view you have to take decision of data type also. So you have to define data types like this. So let's make until this first and then we will see next steps further. Let's until implement until this. So implement until this, then we will see still there are so many things available. We will see one by one. I don't want to go everything at a time. So first of all, what we have to do, we have to create a table. Yes, I already have a table. Assume I can drop this table, drop table product. So even if you want, I can create a fresh table also. You can use existing table also. There is no rule like you have to create freshly. Okay, so you can create table freshly also, or you can use existing also. There is no rule like you have to create freshly, but I'm just going with the process. So now I created my table. Now my table is empty table. So if you see here again, I created my table back and empty table. So this is what table script is. Product table. Okay, fine. Now let's create a Spring Boot application. So that means when you are working with Spring Boot JPA means you have to create an application, right? So let's create Spring Boot application. I think I shown you yesterday. That's why I'm not discussing application creation as a first step. But anyway, we'll do that. Point number one, create Spring Boot application. So how to create it? It's a very simple. Fill in the blanks. So go here, go to our editor, close all these. Okay. So let's see here. I'm creating new Spring Starter project. So the moment these are all details we know. So let's give your project name here, whatever you want. Spring Boot. I'm giving naming convention point of view, but you can give anything: Flipkart, Swiggy, Amazon, whatever it is. Spring Boot JPA application. Fine. Next. So these are all details you know that base package name. I mean, generally this will become as a base package name. So whatever you given here it is, and these are all details we discussed. There is no change in these values. Fine. Next. Yeah. Here when it comes to again, when you are working with database, what you did, you taken JDBC. Sorry, you taken JDBC means you taken Spring Data JDBC. But today we are working with JPA. So that means search with JPA. So you will see Spring Data JPA like this. Select this option. So you have to see Spring Data JPA like this. And point number two. So whenever you are working with database, I said driver is mandatory, whether it is a JDBC, Java JDBC, Spring JDBC, Spring Data JPA, whatever it is. If you are doing database operations from the Java logic means definitely driver jar file should be located so that then Spring will understand from with based on the driver jar file only. Spring Boot knowing that you are working with which database, whether it is a Oracle, MySQL, Postgres, SQL Server, whatever it is. So that's why driver jar file is always mandatory. So I can use Oracle driver. Oracle driver. So here you can select Oracle driver. So these two are enough to create Spring Boot JPA application. So that means you are saying like you are using Spring Boot JPA module into our application and you are using Oracle database. If you are using MySQL, select the MySQL, remove the Oracle. MySQL. So in case if you are going with MySQL like that. But I mean we are using only I'm using Oracle. That's why I'm keeping Oracle. If you are practicing with MySQL, do with MySQL only, like however you did in the JDBC. Or if you are doing with Postgres, do with that only. Don't come back to Oracle. So that you can have a I'm teaching on Oracle, you are practicing on MySQL. So that you can have confidence like you can work with any database like that. So that's why I used to say like that. Okay. So these are the two modules you have to take. That's all. You don't need to do anything. In place of JDBC, you have to take JPA. So next, finish. So what are those two things you have to take is Spring data, JPA, and as well as driver jar file. Driver jar based on the DB. Point number one, that point number one. Point number two. Okay, so our application got created. So this is all we know that. And point number two, the moment you created JPA application, so I said in the JDBC also, we have to configure the DB properties. Configure DB properties. So that means from to which database you are connecting URL username, nothing but you have to give URL, username and password. So these details you have to do. So how will you give means same whatever you used in JDBC properties, same details here also we can use it guys. There is no change in that. So whatever the three values properties you used at JDBC level, same values we can use here also. So that means why are you doing all these things means yes from this Java language you are connecting to the this Oracle database. So this is the database URLs details you have to do. This is common step in JDBC also same details you have to do. So let's give this. So if you are not giving this application and try to start your application, what Spring is saying, see here. Same, this error we got in the what JDBC also. So what Spring Boot is trying to say here, you taken Spring Boot JDBC or JPA into your application project setup level, your project setup level. So that's why are you not given when you take in JPA means you are doing the DB operation. Then why are you not providing the DB details? Like that it is giving the error. So that's why the next step is add the DB properties. Add the DB properties. So what are the properties? There is no difference between JDBC and JPA with respect to these three values. Same properties, same values. There is no change in this. So now let's start our application again. Run as Java application, whatever it is. Spring Boot application, whatever it is. See now what happened. Your application getting started and closed also. Shutdown means closed. So that means it is internally what it is trying to do here. It is observe the things guys. Internally it is connecting to the DB and your credentials all are good. I said earlier also, if you are giving any wrong credentials or maybe somewhat there is a problem in your credentials and all, then your application will not start properly. So that's why please test your application, your Spring Boot application is able to make connection to the DB or not. See, I given wrong password. Now it is trying to establish connection with the DB. It is trying to make. Then it is saying like, sorry, you given wrong details. Something there is a problem in the like that. It is giving the exception because yes, it's a wrong password. So that's why this is a common verification. What we did in the JDBC also. Okay, fine. And let's understand this console logs. I said again, I said also one more point. If you are more interested and if you want to get more knowledge, add that property, whatever I given 2 days back. So add that property sometimes, logger property, logging dot level equal to org dot spring framework equal to debug like I given some property somewhere else. Okay, so you noted down that property. Even I know that property, but simply I'm showing you. So if you are added that property, you will see with so much things here. And from that, if you are going one by one, you can understand a lot of knowledge. You can get a lot of subjects. See here one by one. Yeah. These profiles we will understand later. So Hikari pool is nothing but connection pool. I'll tell you what is the meaning of connection pool on high level. We don't need to worry too much about it. I'll discuss it later, but not now. Later means at least once we are completed one or two examples in the JPA, then I will explain what is this Hikari pool, what is connection pool in a real-time application perspective. I'll discuss it. But right now we don't need to worry about it. And then, but understand the things, what it is doing, trying to do internally and all. Finishing Spring Data repository scan. Repository found zero repository interfaces. Yes, this point is important for me. Why it is, I'm just making note here it is. Yesterday, do you remember or not? I said one point very clearly. In JPA, there are two major component elements are available. One is entity classes and second one is repositories. So if you see here from yesterday's diagram, I said, yeah, if you observe here somewhere, I noted down, I remembered it. Yeah, if you see here, I said there is a concept how we will do all these JPA functionalities, ORM, these are all things is, I said by we have two elements, entity classes and repositories. By using these two concepts, we will do all these ORM functionalities by using JPA. So that is why it is trying to search for some scan, okay, repositories and all, but we will understand what is a repository. But right now zero, because we are not implemented any repositories, that's why zero. Okay, we will understand what is that repositories also. Hikari pool is nothing but connection pool, and it is making connection to our database. Okay, and that is okay, that is okay. Now if you observe here, Hibernate version, what it is guys, Spring Boot internally is using what, Hibernate framework. So Hibernate 6 version they are using. Even I shown you in the jar files also yesterday. Now see the logs also. Based on our yesterday's explanation, internally what I said, Spring Boot taken help of Hibernate. On top of Hibernate, they added new features and they released into Spring Boot JPA into the market. So that means internally Spring Boot also by default using Hibernate framework. So in interviews, probably they will ask you sometimes how Spring Boot JPA is working internally, how table process, I mean, the query generation, all these things are happening means Spring Boot is not doing anything. Spring Boot is taking again help of Hibernate only. So that those points again I will prove going further also. So, but you can understand Spring Boot is using internally Hibernate ORM framework version 6. Hibernate 6 they are using as part of Spring Boot 3. So that is why I taken these logs. And remaining and all, we will, you don't need to worry too much about it. Only because of this reason I taken the logs to say that internally it is using JPA, all this and all. Okay. Mhm. Okay. So with this, what I can say, my application is able to make connections with the database, healthy connections with the database. So that's fine. Now what next step is all about? Let me save it first. Otherwise all our efforts will go away. Spring Boot JPA application setup and examples. Okay. So once you created application, then what I said, to do any DB operation point of view, first of all, you have to write an entity class, and that entity class is defined based on the DB table structure. So yes, we have a DB table created right now with this script. So that means this is what our DB table structure. And I said, once you create a DB table, you have to write a Pojo class for this. I mean entity class. Entity class is nothing but Pojo class. And when you will call a Pojo class as entity class means, I said a point like, if you mark that class as a with an annotation called as @entity, then that class generally we used to call it as a entity class. So based on that, now let's start writing the entity class. Step number 3 is start writing entity class. Entity class. So how to write entity class means based on the DB structure, table structure, not DB. So which table you want to insert data means product. So that's why you take in product table and you are going to write a Pojo class. So let's take a class called as Pojo class. I mean, you can write any class name. And please remember guys, I'm telling you one more time also again, don't never ever, okay, disturb this base package, and whenever you created new packages, please make sure maintaining the base packages always. So see here, I'm adding intentionally entity as a package name. So, but base package name, I did not disturb it. So don't do that. If you are doing disturbing it, then your entity classes will not be scanned properly. So that means the automation of Spring Boot internal automation will not work properly. So that's why your functionalities will not work as expected. So base package, don't disturb at any point of time. That should be your base always when you created a new package. So that rule is applicable for entire Spring Boot framework. Okay. So let me take my class name as product information, product details, whatever it is. It's up to your choice. Class name, you can take anything. Okay. It's a simple Pojo class, I said, right? Now, when you will call this class as an entity class means, yes, you can directly mark this class as a entity annotation. Entity. See here, at the rate entity. Jakarta.persistence API specifies this class as an entity class. This annotation, once you added this annotation to this class becoming as an entity class. So the moment you added entity annotation to this class became as an entity class. If you are not added annotation, then this class is a regular Pojo class only, or this class is a regular Java class only. So you're in Spring Boot, you are saying like, I'm making this class as a entity class. So why and all you will understand later. Slowly we'll see. Okay, so from this, where this annotation came from the JPA, directly from the JPA framework. So that's what we understood, right? Spring Boot is combination of Spring Boot JPA is equal to JPA plus Hibernate plus Spring features. So in this case, they taken, we taken the annotation of Jakarta Persistence API annotation. Okay, now this class is an entity class. Okay, fine. And after that, what I said, defining the properties. Defining the properties. So here I have one more step I have to involve when you are writing the entity class. What you will do? Create a class and mark it with at the rate entity. That's what we did. Okay. And for step number 4 is for which DB table you are creating this class. For which DB table we are creating this entity class. Product, right? The DB table name. So what is our table name? Product. Our table name is product. For example, you use this script, right? I'll keep here. Okay. So table name is what? Product. So for which DB table we are creating this entity class for the table called as product table. So here, the moment you define the entity class, what you have to do is step number 5, define another annotation at class level, again class level only, on at entity class level. I can use this word called as entity class level. So define another annotation at entity class level called as at the rate table. At the rate table. And configure table name value in this annotation. So what you're trying to do here it is, I said, right, you have to create some entity class based on the DB table structure. And the moment you are trying to create entity class, nothing but you are going to create Pojo class only. And what you have to do is, for which table you are creating this entity class? For time being product. That means my point here it is, tomorrow in a real-time project perspective, you will have hundreds of tables. So that means user is a table, products is a table, orders is a table, okay, deliveries is a table, returns is a table, complaints is a table, customer care is a table. Like that, you will have so many tables. So that means Tomorrow, if I want to insert data into users table, like user details, Dilip, age, all this information into user table. So that means what I have to do here, I have to create one more entity class. So that means what is the point you have to understand here? It is in a application point of view, every table, for example, your project is having 10 tables. These are all one, two, three, 5 tables. Assume 5 tables. Products, orders, deliveries, returns point of view. Only 5 tables. Okay, not even 100. Let's take 5 only. No problem. So that means your project is built on top of 5 tables. Now that means you have to write is every table means DB table should contain an entity class. So that means now you have 5 tables means 5 entity classes. That is 5 tables is means you have to implement 5 entity classes. You have to create 5 entity classes. 5 entity classes. So for every DB table, you have to create a separate entity class. And the moment whenever you are dealing with an entity class of product, it will deal only with product table. It's not like the entity class what I created for the product table is going to deal with the order table. No. So that's why the rule is here it is every table should contain an entity class. If your project is having 5 tables, define 5 entity classes based on the rules what we are discussing right away. So at the moment I taken only one table product. Tomorrow we will add order table also in the same application. So that's why what you have to do here it is to make sure that entity class belongs to which table out of 100 tables or 5 tables more than one table, that entity class belongs to which table. So that's why we have to use one more annotation called as at the rate table, and then you are saying like this entity class is dealing with a DB table called as, the annotation is again table. And okay, confuse when you are having multiple annotation with same name. Observe the package name, guys. Here you have to take jakarta.persistence API. So jakarta.persistence nothing but JPA annotation. So I used a table and I said you have to give table name. What is your table name? Product is the table name. So give the DB table name. So what you given? Database table name. So that means what you are trying to say with this class here it is, this is an entity class and this entity class is dealing with this table on the database level. Tomorrow if you have users table, that means you have to create one more class called as user information, whatever it is, it's up to your choice. User information, like that you will create one more entity class. So you will make sure at the rate entity and like at the rate table and followed by this class is dealing with the table called as name equal to users, like that you will do that. So total 2 entity classes available, one entity class dealing with product table, one entity class dealing with the user table. Like that for every table you have to write down the entity classes. Okay, we will see that later. Right now I made only one entity class. If you want I can keep it up or I delete it also. Okay, so we will see that adding one more table, two more tables and all. Now defining the properties. See why I am going this much slow is you have to know what is an entity class and how to prepare it. And the moment you know how to prepare entity classes and creating repository is very simple task. If you know those two things, then you can start making database operations. So that's why I'm going a bit slow only. So don't worry. First example, bit slow, but after that slowly we'll increase the speed. Now, defining the number of properties. How many? I said based on the number of columns. So I have total 3 columns like product ID, product name, price, 3 columns. So I can take 3 properties. Okay, based on number of columns. So what are those? You have columns. One is PID. Okay, it's better just take like this. No problem. You can keep things like this in your project here itself, guys. No problem. Make a comment here. Nothing will happen. So product is the table name, PID, and followed by P name, all this, right? So total three number of columns. Now, and that to data type is number of 5, varchar, number of 8 comma 2. So integer, string. See, this is all SQL data types, but we are working with Java language. So that's why, and Pojo class point of view, I said variables you have to take private. Now you can ask one question, sir, if I am not taking private, then program is going to work or not in the entity class perspective means it will work, but you have to follow encapsulation. So private and integer product ID, like that I taken my variable. Private string product name I taken. Private double product price I taken. Product price I taken. So total three properties I defined and I decided data types also. How I decided integer? Yes, number of 5, only plain values, natural values. String, varchar 2, 50 characters. Yes, string is suitable for that. Price, number of 8 comma 2. That means in DB level you are allowing precision values, floating values. That's why I taken double. So that's how tomorrow if you are having anything like single character value in the DB point of view, then you can take private, char, gender, something like that. For example, assume you define, okay, so single character point of view, char, gender or whatever it is, single character value, then you can define char here and all. So we will see those examples slowly later, step by step. So this is how you have to define the data types. So what I said, three properties and you have to define the data types. So until this we are completed. Now my point here it is, what you have to do here it is, these are all side points, right? Okay. So see here, the third next step what you have to do is, so how do you know that which property belongs to which column? So that means, how do we know that you define three properties, but which property belongs to which column? I said based on the DB table structure, you have to create entity class. And you've taken three columns. I mean, table is having three columns. That's why you've taken three properties. But the point here it is, how do you know that is this belongs to the product ID, PID? Is this belongs to the P name? Is this belongs to the price? How it knows that? So again, in this case, JPA provided an annotation called as column, at the rate column. So that means what you have to do here it is, okay, step number 6, define properties in entity class based on column, based on column of DB table. So that means first thing is you have to define data type. That is most important thing. So define the data type and followed by variable point of view. Okay, fine. And then what you have to do is step number 7, define an annotation at the rate column, at the rate column in on every property, on every property, like that property is dealing with which column of DB table. So that means you are going to use one more annotation called as at the rate column on the property level, and you will define column name as part of that annotation. So that means what you are trying to say here it is, now I define three properties, right? So I'm trying to say See, it says Poja class means you can define setter getter methods means that's there is no you can define setter getters. That is a common thing. So there is no point with setter getters point of view. So just define setter getters. Now come back to these three properties again. So the moment I created product ID, my intention is what this Java property belongs to this DB column. That's what my idea as a developer I thought. But here very clearly we have to say like use an annotation called as at the rate column. What is that annotation is? Column annotation. And this column annotation also if you are observing from where it is coming is it is coming from the JPA only, Jakarta Persistence API. Okay, so define the column. See here, imports if you observe Jakarta persistence column, Jakarta persistence and entity, Jakarta persistence table. So at the rate column and here name equal to what name? Column name of the database, column name of database, column name of database. So what is the column name of database? PID. So that means you are telling like this entity class belongs to the product table. This class belongs to this product table. And in this class, this variable or this property product ID belongs to the PID column. Similarly, you have to give for all the properties column name equal to this column belongs to what? P name. Exact column names you have to give. Otherwise, you will get errors. We will see that experiments later. If you given wrong column name, spelling mistakes, what will happen and all. We will see those experiments later. Now, third column is what? Price, right? So here you have to use name equal to price. Name equal to price. So what you did, you created finally our entity class is completed. So with this, define an annotation at the rate column on every property like that. Like that property is dealing with which column of the DB table. So this has to be repeated for all the properties. So with this, entity class creation is completed. Entity class creation is completed. With this entity class creation is completed. We will see. So going further, a lot of shortcuts I will involve, so many other things we will involve, but basic entity class creation is completed with this. So you have to mark class with entity and then you have to use another annotation table and you have to give table name and column names by using column annotation. And data types you have to define based on the data types what you used while you are creating the DB table. So based on that, you have to create the entity class. So far what we did, we created entity, we completed entity class. Okay, entity class is created. Ultimately, finally entity class is created. But here, the moment you created entity class based on the DB table structure. So far what happened is in your Java project perspective, you created a class with respect to the database table point of view. Okay. So what you did is I'm not taking all the properties. I'll take these three properties. Sorry, if a column is not used, what will get mapping issues with the field. So that's what I said, Akila. I'll introduce shortcuts and all. So for time being, just go through as it is whatever I said. I'll introduce shortcuts later. If you are not given column, if you given column, there are some shortcuts available. First we'll go with manual steps and then we'll come back to the shortcuts. Okay, so we can eliminate the column, but in some specific scenarios. But what and all, I'll come back to that. In a step number, we can go to the step number Z. Okay, so just wait. Okay, So here the point is what we did, DB table. This is again DB table point of view we did. And here what you did, you created a Java class like this, entity class. You created entity class like this. Oh my God. Okay, so this is what we created an entity class and setter getter methods and all we have assumed like that. Okay, fine. So this is the class we created, fine. Now I said in our earlier discussion, now you know how to create object for this. Simply what you will do, you will create an object like product details. It's a simple Java object creation. Product 1 equal to new product details. I mean something like that. Product details. And then you will call setter getter methods. By calling setter methods, you will set the values. Okay, like set id equal to 100, and similarly the value is phone and price is 1 lakh rupees, like that. You will give the things like that. Maybe you given things like this. You can set those values via setter methods like product dot set id, product dot set name, product dot set price, like that. You will finally what will happen, you can create an object, and finally you are able to make values available inside this, like product id equal to, understand the point, product id equal to 100, product name equal to, it's a Java variable names, you given phone, and then product sorry price, third value is what we taken, product price, right? Product price, I mean variable name we taken, and I'm passing real value of 1 lakh rupees or whatever it is. So if you observe here, I taken this variable names, product id, product name, product price. I mean that is what Java. So the moment you created object, these are all instance variables, default values will be initialized, and then you are setting 100 phone and 1 lakh via setter methods. So finally your object contains 100 phone and as well as 1 lakh value as a real values. Now your goal is what? Sending, storing this data on the DB table level. So now the DB table is empty table. You don't have any columns, any values, any rows in this right now. So your goal is PID, P name, and followed by price. This is the DB column names, and the table is product table. What is the table name? Product table. Now, in yesterday's thing, what I said, the moment you have an object, and if you are giving an instruction to something else, if you given an instruction to something else, what will happen? I said, based on that instruction, what is your requirement in this case? You want to insert this data. So that means by giving this object to some other component, if you are giving this object and you are saying like, hey, JPA or Spring Boot JPA, now understand the thing here it is. Now this is Spring Boot JPA. Spring Boot JPA. So here I said the moment you are having object ready and you have to pass an instruction like, for example, insert. Your goal is what? Inserting. And to pass this instruction by taking this object to the JPA, then what JPA will understand, okay, this guy would like to insert this data into this DB table level. But to pass this instruction of insert here, we have one more component called as repository. So what it is a repository. So for a entity class, we will create one more component called as repository component. So let's do one thing. what you will do is we have to implement one more concept called as a repository. So it will be called as JPA repositories. So it is called as JPA repository. So we will see what is repository and all, how to create, we will see tomorrow, but I'm just giving you heads up right now. So here, the moment you created entity class, for an entity class, we have to create a repository. So what step number 8 is? For every entity class, we have to create a repository, JPA repository. So what is repository and all, I will not tell you right now. Tomorrow we will see these details. Repository. So what you have to understand here it is, the moment you created entity class, you have to create again, a repository. So that means in this case, we will create the repository. And then by using this repository in your Java application point of view, by using this repository, we are going to give an instruction to the Spring Boot JPA module here. So here we are going to give an instruction to the Spring Boot JPA module. So now this is the Spring Boot JPA module, what you taken into your application, Spring Boot JPA module, right? So now you are telling to the Spring Boot JPA module, hey JPA module, please take this object and you are passing an instruction also insert or something like save, whatever it is. Like that, via what you are doing via JPA repository, you are sending an instruction to the Spring Boot JPA module. So finally, entity you hand over to the repository and repository finally hand over to the Spring Boot JPA module level. Now what in this case Spring Boot is saying is, okay, let me do whatever you are requesting me like that. So now in this case Spring Boot JPA module, I said right, internally it is using concept of Hibernate. So we saw that right away in the logs also we've seen that. So what Spring Boot is doing, Spring Boot in this case, it will not send this object directly to database. Why? Because database cannot understand the Java language. Database don't know anything about Java object. Database is all about purely built. Database can understand only SQL. So in this case, what Spring Boot is going to do here, it is based on your repository and instruction, whatever the object you hand over to the Spring Boot point of view, then what Spring Boot is doing is Spring Boot start generating SQL query. So what it will do, it will start generating the SQL query. So how it is generating the SQL query? Is it insert query? Is it update query? Is it delete query? Or is it select query? You given clear instruction like insert, right? So then what it will happen here it is, then Hibernate understand, okay, generally we have a method called as save method. Save is nothing but insert. I will introduce tomorrow. So assume you given instruction as save. Save is nothing but inserting only, right? So then what Hibernate is understanding is, okay, let me generate an SQL query like that. It will start generating SQL query from this entity class. So with the help of entity class, so generating SQL query with help of entity class. How it is generating with the help of entity class? If you taken this thing, now Hibernate is reading this entity class. Hibernate is taking help of entity class. So the moment what it is doing, it is observing which object you hand over. Which object you hand over? Product details object. The class is what? You hand over this object. That means entity object only. You have to pass always entity objects. A regular object you cannot pass. So then what internally Spring Boot Hibernate is doing is, it is observing this class, this object belongs to which entity class? Belongs to this class. Then it started reading this entity class. See, by the time you are already configured all the table values. And the instruction came as what? Save. Save is nothing but in DB Java point of view it is save. In DB perspective it is insert. So Java language is save. DB language is insert. So that means now it decided like let's generate the insert query. Okay, fine. That is also good. How it is decided, like insert query, you give an instruction of say. If you give an instruction of delete, then it will understand like delete means it will start preparing the delete query. If you give an instruction of update, then it will start preparing update query. But you given save means it will start generating the insert. Now, how it is generating the SQL query? See, generally you know the syntax, right? Insert into is a fixed terminology into table name. So generally what you have to do here, you will replace with the table name followed by table name and followed by values, and then again the values in the order, again the values you will pass here. So this is the prototype for a insert query. So based on this prototype, what it will do is it will start generating the SQL query like insert into table name. So what is the table? How it knows? You given right here. So it will go to this annotation. It will understand like, okay, table name is called as product. So the table name is product. The table name is product, and then followed by values. Okay, it will start, you know that, right? Writing insert queries, you know that SQL language. So it will take column names are what? Column names PID. So how it knows? Like I'll give you PID, P name, comma price. So how it knows that column names are these three column names? So how it knows these three column names means, if you observe here, PID, this one, P name, this one, price, this one. You given column name annotations, right? So based on the column name annotation product, it is picking and replacing the template product, PID, P name, price. Now when it comes to values, what will happen with respect to values point of view? So it will start putting the values, right, in the parenthesis braces. So how it will post PID? PID level, what is your Java property name product ID? And what is the product ID value? 100. So that means it will keep this object. This is all happens in the runtime level. So this all happens at the runtime. So it keeps all this data internally like this, and it will observe like, so for PID column, Java property name is product ID and product ID value is 100. So like that, it will start making values also in an order. So it will start making values in an order like first value belongs to which column? PID. And PID belongs to product ID. So that means 100 value. Second column, P name. P name belongs to the Java property product name. And product name point of view, the value is phone. And you know that it is a string value. That's why it is keeping in the single quotes. And comma, third column is price. I mean here price, and Java property name is product price, and in the Java object level product price value you given as 1 lakh. Now finally what happened? Your SQL query is ready. So finally what happened means your SQL query is ready. So now finally it's what? An SQL query, a proper SQL query. Now what JPA, what Hibernate will do is it will take this SQL query and it will send to this SQL query the DB level, that Oracle DB, whatever it is. Now finally what it is? It's an SQL. So it's an SQL language. So SQL language knows by the database. Now this query is executed on the DB, and finally 100, phone, and price 1 lakh value being inserted as a record here. So this is the process will happen always in every JPA layered application. This is what happens here. So in this case, as a developer, you passed only object. I never said you have to write SQL query. SQL query is automatically generated internally by the Hibernate as part of the Spring Boot JPA. So that means as a developer, we are implemented two things here. One is entity class. Second one is repository. So we completed today how to write entity class. Tomorrow I'll give you details about how to create the repository. So it's a very simple when comparing with entity. So you will create a repository tomorrow, and the rest of active action we will try to understand practically tomorrow. Theory point of view I explained today. And so step number point of view, repository point of view, we have to create. So that means what is a repository and how to create repository. How to create repository and how repository is working. These are all details we have to understand step by step process. So tomorrow we will see how to create repository. That means by tomorrow we will come to an idea, we will come to a overview of Spring JPA module or Spring Boot JPA module, how it is working. So once you made the repository, then we will make some save, update, delete, load, all these things. Then I will show you all the 4 types of queries, how it is being happening without writing single SQL query. So by tomorrow we'll get a overview how JPA is working. Okay, so that's all for today. Let's connect on tomorrow. If you have any doubts, you can ask me right away.